two before we begin. As you've noticed, we're videotaping. And so when you ask, if you ask a question from the audience, you may be videotaped. And it may be used, it may be broadcast, so be aware. Be forewarned, it's going to happen. We have an hour for this panel discussion to discuss the events of today and any of its ramifications. We're going to use the first half hour of our hour for discussion among the panelists and then throw it open to you, the audience.
Well, there's a saying that the scenery changes only for the lead dog. And I'm not the lead dog. And I also don't want to change the scenery. I have a very difficult task. I have to moderate this panel, and Ecstasy seems to defy moderation. So I will try my best. Okay. We will, the first half hour, have the panelists address themselves. Who is the first to ask a question? Maybe Joe, you had a question for Vicky?
Well, I think an interesting problem would be that of the place from which this kind of music comes. The electric instruments, they do things to you that the usual earlier types of instrument did not do. The composition is from another base. And I was just wondering something about these vibrations and tones. I'm sure that what we heard was something that was working on us in a way that was not that of, let's call it, music.
Well, this kind of music isn't necessarily the kind of music you think about, but you feel. It comes from vibration. It's just like an old instrument. It's just played with new instruments. I mean, it's moving of air, it's vibration, and you get a feeling out of it, and that's what we're after, and that's what you're after in music in general, is a feeling.
Well, I get a sense of mass movements instead of...
Well, it's a lot thicker. It's a lot thicker, and there's many more people doing it, and it's louder than acoustic instruments, and that's what makes it different. It's electric.
And some of the instruments nowadays sample other kinds of sounds that you don't normally associate with music, like industrial sounds, dogs barking, the sound of things crashing into the pavement, and that kind of disaster sounds. And you can use those. You can now organize those kinds of sounds and use them the way you used to use a pitched string or a tuned, cylinder that produces anything that produces a pitch. Now these things can be thought of as pitch, and although they're very dense, they do have pitch. And as a musician, you hear in them overtones of various sorts, and then you say, okay, now I hear something that sounds a little like an E flat, and possibly some mode is implied in it by the overtones that you hear. And that's anything, somebody kicking a can down the street or anything. So, and some of this technology allows us to use those kinds of sounds.
Well, there was something going on there in that long passage, sort of 2/3 the way through. The rhythmical relationship became more and more intricate and complicated, and I didn't see anybody doing anything. So.
Well, she was moving her hands behind the keyboard. You couldn't see her moving her hands, but that's what she was. She was manipulating her fingers. She has great control in fingers.
It was, yeah. The wonderful thing was, you see all these people moving around the stage and all these sounds coming, you wondered who was doing what.
We wondered that ourselves.
Some of this wasn't music. We don't really categorize it as music. I mean, it's noise. Some of it is noise.
That's an arcade
noise
word.
has, there's good noise and then there's bad noise. And, we hope that this noise was good noise.
For you, Mickey. How did you rehearse this piece? Because this possibly can't be cleared in one moment.
Well, we we took the individual elements like the East and the West, and we took little sections and rehearsed them, sort of. You know, we said, okay, this is an instrument, this is an instrument, we'll play sort of something like this, and then we strung it all together with the hero's theme, as we call it.
You have some.
It turned out a little more complicated than it first started.
I would like to see this stuff.
It's incredible.
It mostly talks about stuff that you can't even imagine what it means. Like, let me read you some. Right, in number 1, the wind. Effect settings, Quantec 0, PCM 70 0, Ecotron 0, Multi Effects 0, PCM 42 0, Eventide 0, etc.
This started off as a talking drum solo about 6 months ago, and it sort of got a little out of hand. It sort of grew into this. And Dan Healy, who is our sound mixer, he sat himself in the middle of a quad field, 4 speakers, and he mixed, as it would be for you in the audience. And he had the controls for everybody's input, and it was through him that we had to travel to get to you. So he did an incredible job. I'd like to say that the performers were also the composers here. I didn't compose it, or Rand Weatherwax, who was my co-collaborator as far as conceiving this idea of this is the musical portion, but everybody in their own right was chosen for their feel of adventure, and because they were game. And I'm really glad they showed up. I had a great time working with them.
There was a score of feeling first, and then we tried to assign the instruments to these feelings.
Oh, of course. Well, it was structured around Joe and his work, and the hero with 1,000 Faces, and all of his work, and we sort of used that as the theme. Like in the Grateful Dead, we'll talk about a theme for the evening, like the Hijackers, or let's play anything. You know, we'll think of something.
One Death Squad.
Yeah, any kind of theme, and then we'll use that and go out and we'll play music to that theme. And that's what we did tonight. We broke it up into the East, the West, the elements, the sounds of nature, and the hero's theme sort of wove it together into Margaret, back to the East, and out to Noise, and so forth. And we hadn't performed this until this. This is the first performance of this piece. This was only put together in its sections, and it sort of came to life for you and for us, and that's the only time we'll ever do it. So,
John?
I'm going to come to this question by a circuitous kind of route. The classical scholar Carini had the opinion that the use of drugs arrived rather late on the scene in the Mediterranean, that it represented a sort of decadence, that in the earlier times, people were able to have the experience of these altered states of the underworld and of rebirth quite naively, directly. Then, when they lost their bicameral mind, so to speak, they had to use artificial ways, like they fermented honey, the mead, and the wine, which, by the way, was no ordinary wine. It was really a psychedelic drink. Now, we're in the 80s. The drugs, for most of us, not people, not everybody, but it gets more and more difficult to rely on any kind of, what would you say, medicinal way of getting into altered states. Now, does it sometimes, is it in your mind that this kind of music really has that design, that you really have that intent?
It happens. I don't have that intent really as a musician, but it happens. I mean, you actually find yourself and wonder, wow, what happened? You know? It just is a property of. I think it's something that if you expect it, it's there.
Yeah. This can become a new form of ritual to induce those extraordinary states.
They'll make it illegal too.
So it's good to watch those.
Yeah,
have to watch that stuff.
I found it incredible. If the woman invented her part while she was singing, there was an excellent teamwork how you could chime in and support her in whatever she was creating.
Well, the thing about, she's an incredible musician.
She is.
She's amazing. It's the thing of, musicians everywhere are able to communicate. It's just a matter of listening. And if you hear what somebody's doing and it has fallen anywhere in the realm of your musical experience, it's easy to support them. And if what they're doing has tremendous power, it's just that much easier. And so it's as though if music were a language, she's a person who speaks in really clear sentences with excellent syntax. So the whole thing of playing along with her is just a matter of, oh yeah, okay, it's like, I hear what it is that you're saying, musically speaking, and I say this, you know, at the same time. In that sense, music is a conversation in the best sense of the word. And this music is no exception. Even at its strangest and most stretched out, it's still essentially musicians speaking to each other through that medium.
Well, as we have the very difficult task to slowly descend from ecstasy, how did this music change your life when you started creating this music?
Into music itself?
Yeah. How did it reflect on your own life?
Well, it did everything for me. I mean, I found out who I was, and what I was, why I was. It was everything to me. I've been chasing that feeling ever since.
Maybe you talk a little bit about your book. You know, this is what I'm hinting at.
The book is about the myths concerning percussion and how they were used. And Joe has some percussion myths in his books. Animal Powers has a great Koryak myth.
People started beating on things first.
I think so.
Probably.
By accident.
Maybe.
Well, also there's something to sound, how it affects the mind, you know. And did you ever contemplate on that? What does the sound does to the mind?
Well, it affects me in many ways. You know, I mean, sometimes it's hard to describe it. You know, it's one of those things you can't see, touch, and it changes you in every way possible. It makes you think clearer. It makes you forget. It makes you remember. It makes you do everything. You know, it's great psychotherapy. You know, really.
Yeah, Joe mentioned the sound O, for example, and that it was used for healing. And I talked to an Indian, it was a Tibetan physician, that they have certain sounds for certain illnesses, how you resonate and how it can establish a balance. Did you find any myth in your work?
Well, there's an elaborate discourse around the syllable Om, interpreting it and interpreting the three. There's A, U, and and in Sanskrit, A and U go together to make an O, but actually the A and U are separate, and the M comes A, starts in the back of the throat. With the U, it fills the mouth, then it closes at the lips, and this is called the four-element sound. What would the fourth be? The silence, out of which it comes, which supports it. That's real Hinduism. You know, they always understand that what you are experiencing is floating over what you're not experiencing. Do you understand what I mean? And so it's a marvelous thing. It keeps you from concretizing anything.
Right. The Indian musicians have a word for that. They describe the silence as the unstruck note.
That's correct, yeah. But it underlies the whole thing, what's going on. It corresponds to the term Brahman, which refers to that ground of all being which is beyond comprehension and knowing, which supports all being and of which all comes forth.
I'll buy that.
Yeah.
Okay. it up.
Maybe can we get back to the topic of ecstasy? Ecstasy is necessary as a catharsis, for example, what John mentioned in therapy, that a certain catharsis is necessary and an ecstatic experience, a chaotic experience is absolutely necessary to purge and to regenerate.
You absolutely have to let go of the customary mind, the customary outlook, the assumptions. And once you've done that, it's very upsetting as to do. But once you let go to that extent, then you're inviting all those wonderful things to come up from underneath the visionary state. And it's what is very frightening, what brings the government down on it, I guess. It disturbs people. Letting go is something that, especially in an era like ours in this day, I think it's suddenly a frightening, alien kind of prospect where 20 years ago, because everybody was trying to get into it and loving it. So it varies very much with the tenor of the times, with the economy, the politics, the general outlook, the general feeling of curiosity and creativity and readiness for new things.
Well, I meant that psychotherapy in general is not fully prepared sometimes for these experiences. There's not always a concert of the Grateful Dead available where they can go through this purging.
It's not just the Grateful Dead, Ruth. Music in general, there are other things that do that.
But definitely have a purging and cathartic effect.
Just that it's real loud. More people can hear it.
You even get used to that.
Yeah.
I sat behind the stage and it took me 5 minutes to recuperate. I don't want to introduce any commercials, but I think we need people who understand these stages people are going through. There's a spiritual emergency network here already in the Bay Area, John's work, and there are other houses. So maybe if you're interested, you can write to Lynn and have questions and know people who are going through crisis, and they can be helped and their crisis can be understood. I think it's very important to mention that there is understanding for these crises people are going through. And it should not be, let's say, labeled pathological at all. And this is the worst thing you can do if you sedate people and put them in a mental institution instead of let them then go through a very joyful and ecstatic, even chaotic experience.
This goes the other. It's a kind of therapy that goes the opposite direction from what happens so much nowadays, particularly in psychiatry. It's been called a field that's the upholder of the norm. Keep everything the way it is. If anybody gets out of line, you help them get back in line again. Yeah. And the psyche is meanwhile trying to get free. It's always trying to burst free. That's where the spirit is. The spirit needs to disentangle itself from all those traumas and fly. That's what's so wonderful about this kind of music. And therapy ought to go along with the spirit. It should want to fly in unusual places and encourage that, and then people find their true self. If it's upholding the normal, it's no good.
It's definitely blocking the creative process, and this is the worst thing you can do. I have a question.
Well, without music, we'd all be lost. I mean, the people that I know, for instance, it keeps it together, actually.
Yeah. Do you have a plan, a project, a next project, a scenario you would like to create? Any
Grateful
future
Dead.
project?
Now we're getting back to Grateful Dead business.
Yeah.
a few more months and we'll be there. Yeah.
Sort of normal Grateful Dead.
Right. Yeah. Things go well when we're working and we're playing. We used to play every day, and things used to really go well. And then days were stretched out. We couldn't play together every day, and you have to keep some kind of a balance there. You have to play a lot. Like Jerry said, it's not like riding a bicycle.
No, you have to
practice it.
Nimble.
You have to play it. It's tough. It's not easy business. You have to really search for it. It's not like around
These
every
people
corner.
are really crazy.
Okay. We have 5 more minutes, so why don't every one of you make some last statement, something that's very important for you to say. Last word. Wrap it up. 1 minute. Yeah. Okay, we can go.
Well, I would say, talking about the sort of problem that you were speaking of, a person who flips out like that is on a voyage, on a trip, on a psychological interior voyage. And the worst thing is to make the person feel that this is not as it should be. I mean, a person going down into him or herself is gathering up material that has not been recognized and yet is pressing to be discovered in life. And it is an amplification of consciousness that's actually taking place there. And that's what the visionary voyage really is. And the person should just be encouraged to go ahead. And Schopenhauer has a line somewhere where he says, when all the ships are wrecking, that's the time to set forth. And go into the seas that nobody has survived. And you'll come out with something that's worth having and worth being.
Okay.
My experience of today is that we're doing a thing that I feel is very important at this time right now, which is exploring non-ordinary states. I think what is beautiful about this afternoon was actually being put into them. I found that thing running through my system and welled up, and that's always an indication to me that it's reached me, Non-ordinary states are unpopular at the time, but among people like us and creative people in general, I think this is something that we need to explore in the sense of finding out how to get there. Meditation takes a lot of discipline. It's solo usually, unless you happen to belong to some sort of center. And doing it in groups in a ceremonial fashion, a ritual fashion, is something we need. So the drugs are out nowadays. It's getting more and more impossible. I'm not sure that's the best route anyway. I think it was very necessary in the 60s to open it all up. But then we have to know how to carry that on in ordinary life, how to tap in to these non-ordinary states. So what we're doing today, as I say, is an effort to try to explore and to experience and exchange our reflections about them.
I don't have anything to say, except that if that music is still something that works, it always has worked, I guess. And the gods are still speaking through music. I know it isn't us, it's something else. And I think it's okay that based on a lot of skepticism, a lot of doubt over the years, where I'm reluctant to believe anything that isn't absolutely visible, that isn't easy to test. So the thing of getting report, like in the Grateful Dead, we get lots of reports, about non-ordinary happenings associated with music, and a lot of the stuff, that seems incredible to me. But we've experienced enough stuff that you can describe as incredible coincidence. Just the way Grateful Dead music works, the way we work together, and our association over the years, and also the audience. By now it seems flying in the face of everything that that's been said to me over all this time and all the reports. I mean, I have to either dismiss everybody or else accept that there is some non-ordinary reality at work. You know? And whatever it is, I think, like I say, I think it's okay. That's as far as I can go.
It works for me too. It does the same thing for all the people who put that into it. Chinese say that if there's good music, there's good government.
Everybody go home and practice.
Thank you so much. Before we open the floor for questions from the audience, I would like to thank the University Extension for allowing this exploration to take place in the framework of the university. I think this is definitely a first, and I want to thank personally Lynn Kaufman, who made all the arrangements. Okay, so who has the first question? Yes, you, sir.
Question for Vicki and Jerry. I noticed in the piece you did there was no rock beat to that music at all. Are you saying that to express yourself, you're going beyond that rock beat now in the direction you're going?
Well, I have to repeat the question. Did everybody understand? Okay. Repeat it. Repeat the question.
You said that, why was there no rock beat?
Yes.
Well, we didn't have a drum set.
Yeah, first we sort of do that for a living. I mean, that's what we do most of the time. This was a chance to explore other realms.
But it still had rhythm. I mean, it really, in terms of rhythm, there is no difference between, maybe it's the sound more than anything else. People are used to associating a bass drum and a backbeat of a snare drum and so forth.
I thought that would locate it too geographically.
Yeah.
You know, it makes it real specific. Yeah. United States rock and roll, 1960. You know.
Did it answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. You, sir.
On a tape of an interview that Joseph did with PBS a number of years ago, you expressed some concern about how things were going in the world, or you seemed to be concerned at that time. And now you seem to be a little bit more optimistic, especially since going to the show.
We have to repeat the question first.
John was saying that some time ago I seemed to think things were going badly, and now I don't seem to think that.
They're not going quite so bad.
Well, I think they're going worse, but I'm reconciled to it, that's all. And I think, well, go ahead, blow up, you know?
Curious what show it was that Mr. Campbell went to, and if there was a theme that particular evening.
Oh, you're
Which
asking
show
about-
did you go to? Which show did you go to, and if there was a special theme, which especially?
What show? I have no idea. It was in a place in Oakland.
I think it's Jay Kaiser, one of those shows.
It was a grand affair, that's all I can say. And I became a convert immediately. I can tell you also, in many families of friendship, my reputation went up to the sky.
Okay. You.
Growing up in New Jersey, it was very possible to feel extremely remote from the sacred. However, luckily, a friend of mine brought me to a Grateful Dead concert in 1974 when I was on stage. And what interests me about the whole process of seeing concerts over this long time is that the
it's wisdom, it's probably everything.
I think it was a statement. It was not a question.
Yeah. We are, like I say, we're not really responsible. In a sense, a situation opened up for us and said, stand in this line, you know. Oh, sure, you know. So we got in that line, and that's it. You know, here we are. It really happened to us. We didn't make it. I mean, we didn't construct it. It constructed us.
You couldn't construct something
Yeah,
like this.
it's one of those things. Like for us, it's one of those things where you know it when it's happening, but you can't make it happen. So it's either one of those things. Everybody who goes to Grateful Dead shows knows there's ones that are terrible clinkers, you know, and that's because we try to make it happen. It doesn't happen, and it's that sort of experience, you know, from our point of view too. So it's one of the things that keeps it interesting all this time. It's the reason why we haven't broken up or looked for other work, you know, and stuff like that. Day jobs, you know.
Okay, you in the yellow jacket, yeah?
First of all, I'd like to say, Jerry, you're looking real good.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for coming back. At any rate, Mr. Campbell, it seems to me that the support system that mythology has provided for most cultures seems to have pretty well broken down for our society, and there's a lot of people out there that don't have the great good fortune to receive the emotional and spiritual support that Seeing the Dead over 20 years has provided for a lot of us out here. What can be done, if anything, for the nation as a whole to find some sort of mythic support system so that people stop flaking out, melting down?
Let me quickly repeat the question. The gentleman said that traditional support system, mythology support system have broken down, and what can be supplied in new mythology for our age. Wasn't this your question?
That's not bad.
Okay.
Well, there's no doubt about it. The mythological support has been deliberately removed. Stage by stage, you can see it happening. And we are living in a society now without such a support system. And if you want to know what is really important in running the society, just think of economics. That's all that counts. And ideals and everything else can just fade away if the economics says, well, this is the most prudent thing to do. And with that, you can't just force a mythology into a people. You have to wait. It has to come from a mode of experience. And to summarize my own view of the present situation is this. All the mythologies and support systems have grown up within certain limited horizons. Each had its own people that it was talking to. And now all these horizons are blown. They no longer exist. It's one planet. The great themes of mythology live in all of our lives. What the myths are talking about is what we're living about. And so the future mythology is going to be just the same as the other mythologies, except it will not apply to this people, that people, or another. It will have to apply to the whole globe. Well, this brings up another problem. Namely, the pattern in the past has been to reserve love and the compassion that I spoke about for the in-group and address aggression outward. There is no outward anymore. So something has to be done to assimilate the aggression and turn it into progressive rather than destructive action. That's what's got to come up. And my feeling, thinking what do I do with what I know about mythology to help the world, I find I can't help the world. The world is much too big, but I can help people in it to find themselves and find a way of living harmoniously and significantly and in touch with the grand themes of humanity in your own life in the midst of this outer chaos. And you can do it, and the chaos will finally work itself out. It's got to happen. That's the end.
Earlier, you said that music keeps us together.
Hunter is my, I don't write the words, but the guy that does write them, Robert Hunter, is a guy who has an incredible sense of history, and he knows stuff. He's really a brilliant person, and he has a way of saying what I would try to say, but he can say it better than I can, and it works out well between us in that sense. And, but I can't take any credit for that stuff. He and I both. I'll sing it and not even really understand what it is that the song's saying, and then I see, this song is about something. But really, the thing that I look for is some other emotional reality. I don't even know how to say what it is, but it's something that I understand intuitively. I don't worry about analyzing it.
Okay, let's take some question from there. Yeah. Please.
For the analyst and mythologist, right now we have a bad actor as president, and I was wondering about the support system that 67% of the American people are giving him, according to the polls and so on. What is the mythology that seems to surround him?
The movies, man. The movies.
How do we fight this? How do we combat it? But first, we have to analyze it to find out what it is. And I wish some of you would throw some light on it.
We need a better actor for president. It's got to be an actor. Let's get somebody who can act.
Wait a minute. Wait, can we speak?
Yeah, please.
I really enjoyed that. It's great. We talked a lot about Apollo and Dionysus coming together and emergence of that creates art. And that art, I assume, is ecstasy, right? That is when you get into a state of mind where your technical mind and whatever's going on mentally is gone, and you're in a state of pure creation. And having had that happen several times at vet shows without any chemical assistance at all, I find myself coming out of vet shows in a completely different structure. And this is a sort of an abstract. The last thing you said, Jerry, was keep practicing. And it seems as though you can't reach that place of ecstasy without having a firm technological, or it's like Jackson Pollock can't throw paint on a canvas without knowing how to do a master's work of art.
Right. You gotta learn to draw first.
Is where does the structure go when you're into ecstasy? Do you understand?
Yeah.
Where does it go away? Does it come back? Or are we trying to transcend?
You have it to lose it.
Wait, can I just repeat the question a little bit? To get to this stage of ecstasy, certain practices are necessary. And where does the practice go when you are in ecstasy? Was the question? Was this right?
Right. And are we trying to lose it all together? I mean, are we trying? You mentioned goals about consciousness goals. Goals for this. Do you understand what I'm saying? We're trying to lose this all together.
I can say something about form and structure, about music. I mean, as far as what our goals are collectively, I don't know. We all know, but I don't know. Whatever it is. And as far as structure goes, it's something you want to have so you can get rid of it. There was a time when the Grateful Dead used to get together and practice every day, 11/4 time. We would play stuff in 11/4 time over and over. Until pretty soon it was like something that you understood on a different level. You no longer had to think about it. But you do have to pay those dues somewhere along the line in order to have the form to forget about it. Music is kind of like that. It's a discipline of becoming something and losing structure as you go. And that's kind of the whole story, really. But it's a trick, It is. I don't know whether that's what it's about. It's just a doorway.
Does your structure keep getting better?
Hopefully. Yeah, it's something like that. This is tough stuff to talk about because it doesn't fall into language. It falls into some other experience. So it's.
Did everybody understand? Yeah, please, in the back. Yeah.
I address myself.
Wait a second. Okay, you and that you.
I address myself to Joseph Campbell. I belong to a women's spiritual group of 7 women. We've met as a self-help, self-guided group. I know and we know that we want ecstasy in our life, but it came out as the word passion. What ritual ritual can we start to institute as we meet every week to develop and to work up to this ecstasy that's in the old myths? I mean, I know there's music, I know we need mass, I know we need to lose our identity, but give me some guidance to develop a ritual for us 7 women.
Do I have to repeat it? How a women's group can find a ritual too.
Well, I know people realize that we don't have adequate rituals. And how are we going to create rituals? A ritual is simply a definition of something that is important for life, so that you will put your mind on it. For instance, when you are sitting down to eat, what you're doing is consuming what once was alive. Life lives by eating other lives. It wouldn't be here otherwise. And to do that without respect and regard for that which has given its life for you is to live out of touch with the reality of your existence. So there is normally, in most societies, a little ritual of gratitude, or at least of contemplation on the mystery of what you're doing when you're eating something. Now, in our Western tradition, normally, where we have a notion about God, we thank God for giving us the food. But in early hunting and gathering societies, where they went out and killed the animal, they thanked the animal, which seems to me a little more appropriate. The other part of it is that the very animals that they were killing and eating were the very animals that were giving them their spiritual inspiration. You find, for instance, on the American plains, the buffalo, which was the principal source of food, was the principal religiously revered animal at the same time. In the northwest coast, it was the salmon. You have a system of rituals that let you know what you're doing when you're living. Another ritual will have to do with your relationship to your neighbors and to your family and so forth. Little family rituals to let children know what they owe to their parents, and parents know what they owe to their children, and to turn that into a ritual system. Now, if you want to institute rituals, find what it is that is significant in your life and think of some way of meditating on it and realizing what it is, what it involves. And gradually, for you or the group that you are associated with, you will develop a ritual. The big social rituals had to do with everyone's dependence upon everybody else and upon certain principles for which those people were living. But as we've all been saying here, that has disintegrated now. And you've got to wait for society, for a group to come to consciousness that it is a group. And you can't invent rituals. You can't invent myths. You can no sooner tell what the next mythology is to be than you can predict tonight's dream. Myths come from the ground of experience in here, and you presently find something is developing. But the main thing is think of your own life and how to make yourself aware of what the significant events are and the significant relationships, and practice little rituals. T.S. Eliot, in his play The Cocktail Party, was speaking of the cocktail party as a contemporary ritual of social relationships. That's what it's all about.
I'd like to read this and
Speak up.
address the question to Jerry.
Can you speak a little bit louder?
Yeah, I'd like to read this and then address the question to Jerry and Mickey. Imagine an energy field incorporating an infinitely gradiated zone scale of consciousness, ranging from the blackest of emotions to the clearest, brightest, childlike eye. Imagine that this energy field can respond to your deepest personal vibrations and immediately reflect that energy back to you in a relevant and enlightened way. Imagine that a magical rock and roll band is the custodian of such an energy field. Imagine that you can hear, feel, and sometimes even see your personal interaction with this energy field. This is what it's like from the viewpoint of many of the audience members at a Dead concert.
That's what it's like to be in the band. Say it with spirit.
That was my question, actually.
such seemingly insignificant things as an individual listener's psychic energy. Sometimes people inherit in the music, sometimes the musicians clearly show it by overt gestures and facial expressions, even heard across the Garvey auditorium or on television.
I'm sorry. I don't think we have time for more lengthy readings. Do you have one sentence question, please?
Well, my question was, what is your subjective experience of this phenomenon?
It's not any one kind of experience, it's all kinds of experience. Sometimes it's awful, you know. Sometimes nothing works right, you know. I mean, there's a million little things that you have to get over, and when you finally get over everything, then it's like nothing. You know, it's like the easiest thing in the world. It's as simple as can be. It's like breathing. It's just, it's happening. But everything up to that is tremendously hard work. You know, and if there were any way to shortcut through that, boy, you know, lead me to it. But there isn't, and it's not anything, it just is not that kind of, it's something you can't control by will. You know, it's something you have to get out of the way of, almost. Something like that.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Okay, Julia.
I have a question that I'd like to address to all four of you, actually. But first, I'd like to say to this man over here that I at least feel like myths, and Joseph Campbell referred to this, that myths we're living out every night and every day when we go to sleep and when we daydream and fantasize. If you want to help your nation, maybe talk to people in your immediate environment about that more as much as you can, because that's something I've been trying to do. It seems to be helping me a lot. Just get into your dreams. My question to all four of you is has to do with a historical placement of the Grateful Dead and your perceptions of that, however deep or shallow they may be. I was kind of wondering, like, do you see a specific continuity between ancient cultures, rituals and traditions, and spiritual practices, and what's going on with the Grateful Dead in a very specific way that's leading to any place that you can see in your immediate vision right now? And I'd especially like to ask Mickey and Jerry about that. I'm really curious about what the band members, how they place themselves personally as the Grateful Dead in a historical context.
Did everybody understand? Okay, good.
Well, everyone, the Deadhead seem to come to a concert with no expectations. They come open, and they leave their troubles behind, or whatever it is, and they try to come into a new kind of reality, or some kind of different thing that should happen to them. We do the same thing. As we approach the stage, we try to cast off everything. When we hit the stage, we are nothing. You know, we just have all of our experiences, and then we try to forget and just be. And that's the hardest thing to do. And as the Grateful Dead, there is a responsibility to be able to do that. Because without that, the Grateful Dead doesn't happen. It just is, there's 6 musicians struggling to play music. But there's something that happens, and it's a transformation. The audience is going through a transformation. We're going through a transformation. And the unexpected becomes every day. You know, you just don't take it. You don't take it for granted, and you work at it real hard, but you don't work at it in normal ways. And it's something that just has to happen. You have to set the stage for magic to happen, and then sometimes it does.
Yeah, sometimes it does.
And if you don't leave room for it, it won't. Once you've been there, it's really hard not to go there again. I mean, you want it again and again and again. You can't get enough of it. And it's so serious, it's been keeping us doing this, chasing this feeling for years. And that's all we are. We're just on the trail of this thing, and we're trying to get it right.
And the trail hasn't gone cold yet.
No, it's not cold. It keeps leading you further and further on, and we see how high it gets everyone, and we take note. It doesn't go unnoticed. It really doesn't, or else we wouldn't be doing it for this long. What is connection to ancient rituals? Well, there's a cleansing thing that happens to everyone involved. You get to see yourself, like someone had mentioned, and yeah. We're trying to create collectively an experience that will heighten our lives or make it more meaningful or will shed light.
The thing about the ancient experience is that they couldn't talk about it any better than we can. So we have little evidence about what it was they were talking about, except that there's something that we can't talk about either.
Well, let's say one thing. There was a necessity for transformation, and this is historical documented. So whatever way it was achieved. Joe, you want to say something to this topic too? The question was to all four.
I think it's been beautifully expressed that way. We do get disoriented as to what's going on if we are not in touch with our myth, I think. And anything of this kind puts us back in touch with our primordial mind. And our danger the other way is to be out of touch with it so that we lose track. I think the question that came up earlier about what it means that we're in the political and social state that we're in is also about that. We seem to be bent on holding everything desperately the way it is without any change, please, except prosperity, meaning the market will go up. And here it's world destruction facing us out there. It's a myth form, but we're taking it in a political way instead. And it's crucial which way we take that. If we're out of touch with our myth, we think it's a question of bombs. If we're in touch with our myth, we know we have to change our culture. You know, that's the scary thing. People are much more afraid of that than they are of war. So I think anything of this kind that keeps us in relation to our interior life and our primordial mind is extremely valuable. It's necessary.
Dionysus and the quality of grieving or sadness in relation to Dionysus. And I wanted to ask Campbell if there's a relationship in the transformation that occurs with this phenomenon. Is there a relationship with the sadness and the grieving that causes the transformation to occur?
Is sadness and grieving necessary for transformation?
Well, the first noble truth of the Buddha is all life is sorrowful.
Yeah.
And the nirvana is released from sorrow. It is not released from life, which is sorrowful, but it's released from the attitude toward life that gives you sorrow in contemplating the inevitables of life. And what art does is help you to find a center from which to let your energies flow into life without fear and without grief for the sorrow. There is a joy. There is a formula for living as a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is one who has achieved realization of the eternal principle within himself, but instead of quitting life, has voluntarily come into it after having got past, as you might say, a voluntary coming in. This is the business of an incarnation. Christ comes voluntarily to be crucified. The formula, and it's one to help you through, is joyful participation in the sorrows of the world. Let's say you have the strength to live. You have the strength to live. Now, my wife Jean is a dancer, and I have seen it happen that in the course of a dance she will sustain some injury to the leg or something like this and goes right on the dance without even knowing that the injury has occurred until the dance is over. when you are in full play in life, these things that mean so much when your energy content is low, just you ride on them. And the whole problem, I think, in ritual and in art is to give you the strength to be worthy to be alive, you know, and not whining and in deep sorrow all the time. But life has no poignancy unless there's that sorrow in it. I mean, the fact that people are to die is what gives them their worth now, you might say. And this realization of the poignancy of the ephemeral character of what it is you are delighting in is really the essence of life. And where your pain is where your life is, and love it. That's what I would say.
I'm afraid I didn't give you any warning. I can allow only one more question. So, which corner did I neglect most? Okay, you. Last question.
This is really Mr. Campbell. At Grateful Dead shows, I've looked around at times when the music is particularly hot and when I'm caught up in that rapture that happens. And I look around me and see that everyone else is also in this state. And what I feel isn't a few thousand people all going off at once, but I feel all of us as one going off. And of course, this thing happens in other cultures, you know, Gamelan music, tribal ritual. It happens without music, you know, being alone on the mountaintops under the stars, whatnot. And my question is in relationship to your closing statement of this is your answer to the atomic bomb. What Jerry talked about once in an interview I heard about the 100th monkey effect, and how that this is a vibe that goes out not only within the group of people that it's happening to, but out to the world that feels it at large, and you know, out to the stars. I was wondering if you could elaborate on.
Well, if I've understood the question, I'm not quite sure that I did. It has to do with my feeling about the Grateful Dead as being the answer to the atom bomb. Is that it? Well, the atom bomb is a function of separation. The fact that people are separated from each other by lines of thinking. They align themselves with this group against that group and so forth and so on. And what I felt in my evening with the Grateful Dead in one of their wonderful harmonizing experiences was that all differentiations between age, race, and economic situation and all this were simply erased. And people were feeling themselves as human beings having, as you said, a common experience and an experience of joy and fulfillment and life in play. And there was no need for any notion of separation and my defending myself against you or anything of the kind. So I think that the more of that we can bring forth, and it's the function of the arts to do this in this world today, the less there will be any trend toward the separation which the atom bomb represents. My simple point was that the experience of harmony and unity is the answer to this distinction, that the Iron Curtain principle or the bamboo curtain principle. And the music, the arts, and the experience of beautiful, harmonious humanity and joyful humanity that brings about may win the day in the end. That's what I would say. Thank you.